This show is a part of the FM Podcast Network, the home of great music podcasts. Visit us at fmpods.com.
For the second episode in the Chicago Sessions, my guest, Dylanlogist, friend, and celebrated Chicago filmmaker Michael Glover Smith discusses his work, including his most recent movie, the award-winning short Handle with Care. He also shares his insights on Dylan's film aesthetic and Dylan's art more broadly. When we filmed and recorded this episode last fall, A Complete Unknown hadn't yet been released. Some of what we discussed may seem a bit outdated, as some of our speculation or questions have been answered on screen. Still, talking with Michael about his movies and Dylan in movies was an education. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Hello and welcome to another episode of Infinity Goes Up on Trial. I'm your host, Erin Callahan, and today I am talking with filmmaker, author, Dylan expert, and all-around amazing person, Michael Glover Smith. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to talk all things Bob Dylan with you.
Is it not the best thing we can do?
It's my favorite thing to do.
Other than maybe seeing Bob Dylan.
Right, which we will also be doing together very shortly.
I know, this is amazing. We've seen a bunch of shows together. I think maybe I was saying to Henry, this would be, I think, my 7th show with Henry.
Wow.
My 8th or 9th with Adam, and this I think is 4th or 5th with you.
Yeah, going back to 2021.
I was going to say the anthem. That was the first one. All right, so I want to congratulate you on the success you've had on your last 2 movies. Relative, and we can put whatever you're comfortable with sharing. Relative, I know it's on Amazon now, so everyone should see it if they haven't, and I think I put that on Twitter and everywhere, like if you have not seen this movie, watch it. And then Handle with Care, your short, and they've done well on the festival circuit. I want to talk a little bit about that, but we talked about Relative when you were with me on the Dylan Taunts, but I want to talk a little bit about Handle with Care. I've seen Relative twice, and thankfully you sent me the link to Handle with Care yesterday, so I was able to watch it 2 times as well. It's so beautiful. It's such a film about human connection and kind of the scars we see, the scars we don't, which is it's lovely. So both of them have Dylan references or subtle nods to Dylan. Would you prefer people to find out about them, or do you want to, are you happy to
I don't
tell
mind
us?
spoiling them.
Please, okay, spoiler alert, good. That's going to be annoying.
Let's just roll with it.
Okay, you can edit that out. Okay, so you don't mind spoiling them?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. Well, the original title of Relative was actually Together Through Life.
Okay.
And then everybody told me I could not call the movie that.
Why?
Because they didn't think it was a good title.
Well, clearly it is.
Exactly. No, I always want to name my movies after Dylan songs or Dylan album titles, and then people always talk me out of it.
Why?
So, not because it's a Dylan title, just because they think something else would be better.
Okay.
Kind of like how I always want to shoot in black and white, and people always talk me out of that as well.
All right.
Because when you make a feature film, people think that audiences will not want to watch a film in black and white. But they're wrong.
Yeah, I'm thinking that.
Yeah, people think that, young people today are not used to seeing films in black and white, therefore they won't want to watch your movie. But I make micro-budget independent films, so anybody who watches a movie made at my budget level is going to be an adventurous viewer.
Right.
So they'll go with whatever
There are no explosions in your movies.
No, exactly. Exactly.
Nothing's blowing up. There are no superheroes. You have a different audience.
Exactly.
Right.
So anyway, Relative, I ended up calling it Relative, shot it in color, and then when I did Handle with Care, because it's so short and so small, then I could do whatever the hell I want. So it's named after a Traveling Wilburys song.
Yes.
And it's in black and white.
Yes. I think you should do whatever the hell you want anyway. You're an artist.
I mean, I do.
Right.
But filmmaking is collaborative, so I have to listen to my collaborators.
All right, that's fair.
And my rule is basically, if I get the same note from multiple people, then I know that they're right.
Okay, that's fair.
If I get the note from them independently of each other.
Okay, that's fair. Because I'm like, black and white would have been great. Actually, we would have missed the beauty of that that living room
Yes.
in Relative
Yes.
had it been in black and white.
So, no, it really
Right.
did need to be in color.
I agree with that. That was a good note. So, what other kind of references to Dylan do you have in the movies? I know that you have Heaven's Door.
Heaven's Door whiskey is in the hop leaf in Relative when Benji and Hecla first meet. And by the way, the hop leaf is a great. It's a Chicago institution.
Shout out.
And everyone should go there. But they don't stock Heaven's Door. So I had to bring a bottle from my personal stash and put it on the shelf.
All right.
To make it seem like they do carry it.
I think that was good. So other than that, are there like bits of dialogue or do you kind of borrow?
There's a lot of there are a lot of song lyrics that kind of found their way into the dialogue. The Joni Mitchell. There's Joni Mitchell references, but there are no Dylan lyric references. There's a Leonard Cohen reference. There's a Kesha reference. Do you know Kesha?
Yeah.
So
I love that you're like, do you know Kesha?
Yeah. So it's Uncle Joe. When he comes in, he goes, "The party don't start till I walk in."
That's amazing.
But nobody
to have
realized.
Uncle Joe say it too.
Exactly.
It's such a great.
But I think the only other Dylan reference in the film, aside from "Together Through Life," which is spoken in the film, the only other one is you hear Brownsville, Texas, and Key West, Florida mentioned in very close succession.
All right. That's fair. So does Dylan affect or influence your filmmaking?
Absolutely.
How?
Well, I think more influenced by him as a songwriter and as a performer than I am influenced by him as a filmmaker.
Right.
Even though I love his films, I think Renaldo and Clara is amazing. I think it's one of his.
We're going to talk about that again.
I think it's one of his greatest achievements as an artist.
Henry and I were saying yesterday, I'm sorry to step on you, but he said, well, he hasn't made a great film. I'm like, yeah, or maybe that we haven't understood how great that is.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm happy to correct Henry on that one. Whenever I appear on podcasts, people always want to know how I'm influenced by Dylan's films, and the truth is I'm really not.
Right.
Because Renaldo and Clara and Eat the Document they're experimental. They're documentaries that have a strong experimental slant to them.
Right.
I make narrative films.
Right.
But I think everything I do is influenced by the spirit with which he, creates. In particular, his spontaneity. Whenever I see him live, he's so in the moment. Everything he's deciding what to do right then and there, but there's a foundation to it,
right?
And that's the way I think artists should be in any medium. You should never be too married to your preconceived ideas of the way things are supposed to go.
So you have a script, and in the moment, tell me, is there an example that you can give us of in the moment where it's in the script, or you're looking at a performance as a director and you change something?
The example I just gave you from Relative about Key West and Brownsville.
Okay.
So originally it was only Brownsville was
Right.
referenced. You have people sitting around a table, and the character of Lucia talks about being from the South.
Right.
She goes, it doesn't get any more Southern than Brownsville.
Right.
That was the end of that conversation. And we shot that dialogue a couple times, and I felt like we could go a little further. So it just occurred to me spontaneously. I said, Rod, when she says that, say, no, it's Key West. No, first I said, Lucia, say, after you say the line about it doesn't get any more Southern than Brownsville, say that's the southernmost point in the continental U.S.
Right.
And then Rod, you correct her and say, no, it's Key West.
Right.
And then Yvonne, you say, she said continental, Rod. And, they did that one time we filmed it, and that's what's in the film.
Which is so great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a wonderful moment, and like putting that together, because I'm thinking Brownsville, as someone who lives in Texas, I'm like, oh, that is south. But then, no, the southernmost point is literally...
It's an island.
Yeah, but it's also labeled, and you can have it's a photo op when you're in Key West.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, so it's, you always want to be open to what's happening with the actors.
Right.
And it's always different than in rehearsal. Or, when you visit a location, you come up with a shot list based on the way it looks. But then once you're in that space with the actors and the crew and the equipment, it feels different.
Right.
And so you have to just be alive to, how can I make this the best that it can be right now?
Which I think sort of speaks to what you're saying about film being collaborative, and that's what Dylan is doing on stage. And, not to disparage Donnie in any way, Donnie Herron, but when, why can't I think of the name? Jimmy Vaughn sat in the last show, and I'm sure Adam has told you about this.
Yeah.
It was like, and Court said this too, it was like Christmas morning.
Yeah.
They all, the energy on the stage changed.
Yeah.
And so it was so beautiful to see, like Dylan was smiling, and Tony looked like he the biggest smile I've ever seen, and he has a big smile as it is, but his cheeks were just like, he was so happy. And then watching him teach Jimmy how to play the songs and play off of Dylan.
Yeah.
It was just so beautiful to watch that.
And I think that also just happened with Lucas Nelson during the Outlaw Fest.
Right.
Dylan really upped his game when Lucas came out on stage.
Right, and so it's just like what you're saying is like it's again that energy that people are playing off of, that you can have a script, but when you're in the room with folks and you're kind of seeing the different energy that is playing off of people or how they're performing, and you're like, oh, I need to do better.
Yeah. You prep as much as you can, but then at a certain point you have to kind of forget about it,
Yeah, I equate Jimmy Vaughn coming on stage to the Billy Preston moments
in
Let It Be, where it completely breaks attention.
Yes, they all just love him so much.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's funny because I turned to Court and I was like, did Donnie just get fired? He did not, but it was interesting. Has there ever been a time when an actor, you have an idea of how you want the performance to play out, and the actor does something different and you're like, okay, I didn't, it was something beyond what you had thought.
Yeah, and the truth is, actors are always going to surprise you. It's always going to be a little different than what you thought, and you have to let them do what they want to do.
Right.
I mean, you can try and guide them, but ultimately, when you write something, it's personal to you. But then as soon as those words start coming out of somebody else's mouth, it's a marriage between what you intended and what they intend. Right. And I think the worst thing you can do as a director is try and force an actor to go against their instinct. And I learned that pretty early on. It's going to be bad if you try and make them do something that's not natural to them. I made a film called Mercury in Retrograde in 2017, and I worked with this great French...
Can we have the link to that?
Yes. Yeah,
okay, cool.
That's streaming on Prime as well. If you can stream it for free if you're a member. But I worked with a really great French actress named Roxane Mesquida, who is somebody I had seen in a lot of films, films that have played the Cannes Film Festival.
Right.
She's worked 3 times with one of my favorite directors, someone named Catherine Breillat. And Roxane, told me stories about working with Catherine Breillat and how, Catherine Breillat kind of let her do what she wanted to do, even though it was different than what was in the script. And that ended up influencing how we did Mercury, because there was one scene where there's a dialogue between some women talking about leaving a tip when you buy coffee. And I thought this was the wittiest dialogue I had ever written, because it's about how you should never tip someone in a coffee shop if they can't see you put the tip into the tip jar.
That is witty.
Because they, otherwise they don't know that you did it.
Right.
And then they think that maybe you didn't do it.
Right.
So I thought that was so fun, and I wanted her to say it and to kind of be laughing while she said it, but she said it in the bitchiest way possible. And that's just how she wanted to do it.
Right.
And so I had to just let it be that way. And it's better. Because that's how she wanted to do it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So can you tell us a little bit about, and I think you have a little bit about Relative, and then I'll ask the same thing, just sort of like the narrative or anything that you want to share, because we'll put the links to the movies, or the movies in the show notes for what you want to share with us. But I loved Relative, just a story about a family. So tell us a little bit more about it. For those people who are crazy enough to have not seen it yet.
Well, thank you for your kind words.
Mm-hmm.
Relative is my most recent feature.
Yes.
It's the fourth one that I did, and it's my personal favorite
Mm-hmm.
because
Why?
it's about family
Yes.
relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really, I think, trying to stretch myself
Right.
as a writer-director to depict older characters. You know, we have characters in their late 60s, and it's about parent-child relationships, which is something I had never really explored before. So it was fun trying to tackle those family bonds, which I think are very complicated.
Mm-hmm. Was it difficult to get the cast then to, I mean, did they have to be more of an ensemble than just kind of actors doing a job and coming in?
Oh yeah. Because they have to convince you that they're related.
And
you know?
I was convinced.
And that they have this shared history that goes back decades. You know, that was really important. So they spent a lot of time talking to one another and you know, to try and create a kind of shorthand.
Right.
Like the actor who plays Rod, he came up kind of with a nickname for all of his siblings. Like he calls Nora No. You know, that was something he came up with. And that's good. You know, so they're not really improvising. It's just kind of like one word here or there.
Right.
When they call each other a nickname. But that's the kind of thing that's super helpful because it gives it a sense of verisimilitude.
And then it goes, good vocabulary word, film term that we use. That's always a hard thing for my students to kind of to say and then also to explain back to me.
Which one, verisimilitude?
Yeah, when I teach lit and film.
Just say authenticity.
Right,
instead.
which you got booed in my class when you guest lectured.
Did I?
Remember my sweet little friend, my sweet little student Maddie? She asked you White Sox or Cubbies.
Oh, and I said socks.
Yeah, and she booed you. And the thing is, she was such a kind and generous student that was the first sort of ugly moment I had with her. And then in your thank you note, she wrote, "I'm sorry for booing."
Hey, Erin, at least she didn't boo the film.
Right, that's what she loved the film. So that was so funny. But that goes back to casting to kind of find that chemistry between the actors and like how. I mean, I guess it would be like picking your bandmates and being in rehearsals with them like Dylan does. So
Absolutely.
how do you cast?
What you want to cast the best people that you can.
But if the best people are jerks?
Then you don't cast them.
Okay.
You're trying to strike a balance between who's the best and then who has the best chemistry with the other actors.
Right.
So normally what we do, the traditional audition process is the first round, we usually look at self-tapes and then the people that we like, we have callbacks.
Okay.
And then we do chemistry reads.
Oh, interesting.
Because when my films, as you know, they're about people, they're about relationships, and they're about chemistry and communication. So you can have the two best actors in the world individually, but their chemistry might not be what it should be.
Right.
You know, like Benji and Hecla in Relative, that chemistry, when they're on the porch and they kiss for the first time, you cannot manufacture that.
Right.
You know, and I mean, I think they both have significant others. I'm not trying to imply that. Yeah. But it's just like some people have it and some don't. So that's why you have callbacks. It's about who can convince you that they're dating.
They have a history.
Who can convince you that they're siblings. You know, that's a different kind of chemistry.
Yeah. You made me think of that. I can't remember the movie with Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie, and you have these two beautiful people, and there's like...
You don't believe it.
It's so dead. There's nothing between them.
Exactly.
It's painful to watch.
Yeah. The two most beautiful people in the world.
Right.
And there's no heat.
There is nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about Handle with Care, which is such a beautiful, I mean, you emailed less than 8 minutes. I'm like, yeah, but there's so much. It's a short story. I mean, that's what short films are.
That's the challenge of making a short film. I just got asked about this in Tallahassee.
Tell us.
You want to do a lot in a very short amount of time. You never want to overstay your welcome.
Right.
And that film we shot in one night.
Wow.
Shot the whole thing in 8 hours.
Wow.
It's 2 locations, one exterior, one interior.
I love the exterior shot though when he's looking at her scar. That's such a beautiful shot.
Oh yes. Yeah, when we're outside of the bar. I actually wrote that into the script, which is not something I normally do. I normally don't write I don't describe shots.
You're not Eugene O'Neill.
No, exactly. Yeah, not super detailed.
Yeah.
But for that moment, it did say, we see this from outside the bar as if it were the point of view of a passerby.
But also, it's so beautiful because in literature, that glass having the separation, and you see these people connected, but you're on the outside looking at their connection.
Exactly.
It's just such a beautiful shot.
Thank you. I wanted it to feel kind of voyeuristic, And also, there's an irony because it's the most intimate moment in the film. He's literally looking at a scar on the back of the neck, but we're kind of far away. So, we're more distant from them.
And had you shown the scar, I don't think it would have worked as well to, I just think it was just so nice to have that distance and, be voyeuristic and watch them interact.
Yes. Yeah.
With that separation between us.
Right.
So good.
Thank you.
So good. So, do I have follow-ups to that? No, I don't know. I mean, it is like, I think Mary Hemingway, said that in short stories, Ernest Hemingway's, whether you love him or hate him, love his personal life or not, she said that his short stories, each word has the depth of poetry in it because it's carrying so much weight.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what you achieved with Handle with Care. And I haven't seen any of your other shorts that you've made, but like every shot, every bit of dialogue, there's so much depth there. And so much emotion that, and I love the very end when she asks him to kiss her goodnight, and it's like, it's almost like a platonic kiss, but like that's all he can do right now.
Right.
And maybe there's more, but like, it's just, it's so beautiful.
The right now is the operative phrase.
Right.
Yeah. And I think some people don't know how to respond to the film because I wanted it to be funny and also sad.
Right.
And some people aren't sure if they should laugh at it. And, I like trying to provoke a complicated response in the viewer. I mean, that's the whole point is, combine comedy and drama.
Isn't that what Bob does?
Exactly. right. And the ending, I actually had a student ask me, did she want the kiss to be longer? And I said, yeah, clearly.
Right. She asked him upstairs.
And he turns her down, he gives her a peck, and he walks away, and she watches him walk away. There's something sad about that because she wanted more.
Right.
And he said, I wanted more.
That's amazing.
I wanted them to kiss longer.
So last time we talked for the Dylan Taunts, we had a great conversation about Dylan's movies. And I do want to follow up on that because I recently had my own little Dylan film fest where I watched Don't Look Back, Renaldo and Clara, I'm Not There, Hearts of Fire, and I may have watched Unplugged as well, because I love the polka dots. All right, so why do you think Renaldo and Clara is considered a failure? Because that is, I think, is that the hill you're going to die on?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Without a doubt. It's just too weird. That's the problem. The way he composed the film in the editing room, it follows a poetic logic. Okay. And that's not something people are used to seeing. Even Masked and Anonymous, which is a weird movie. The language, the visual language of it is actually very conventional.
Right.
If you were to watch Masked and Anonymous with the sound turned off, it would look like a normal movie.
Right.
What makes it weird is the fact that people are speaking in cryptic aphorisms, a lot of which are quotations of other things, and it's the dialogue. But Renaldo and Clara, the way it's edited is what's strange about that film.
So you said
it's jumping around in time and space in a way that's disorienting.
Right.
Deliberately so.
So I like that you say it's poetic. So what do you think it's trying to communicate, if it's trying to communicate anything?
Well, what I love about Renaldo and Clara is it was obviously very carefully made by Dylan. Like I said, he composed it in the editing suite.
Right.
So, if you look at the opening scene, it's him and Bobby Newirth playing When I Paint My Masterpiece.
Right.
Dylan is literally wearing a mask.
Yes.
It's such a funny way to open the movie. That song in particular makes you wonder, is this going to be his masterpiece?
But he thought it was.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he worked so hard on it. And if you watch the film carefully, you can't help but be aware of how meticulous he was with the editing.
Right.
And they weren't that way with the shooting. So I think there's a kind of a productive tension between how it was shot, which I think is in a very loose, freewheeling way, and then how he edited it, which was to write down, you know, on note cards what happened in every scene and, you know, what songs they were playing, and then, you know, kind of use that to sort of pre-visualize the edit.
I love that.
Yeah, based on the themes.
Right, right.
And, you know, at the very beginning of the film, it goes from that performance of When I Paint My Masterpiece to a scene where Ratso Sloman, the great journalist who wrote On the Road with Bob Dylan, one of the best Dylan books ever.
Right.
It's him in what looks like the lobby of a hotel with some members of the Rolling Thunder Revue, and he's complaining that he doesn't have access.
Right.
And I need access. And it's a very short scene. But I think the point of that is he's talking about he needs access to Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and Sarah Dillon in order to be able to write for Rolling Stone.
Right.
But I think by Dylan putting that there, Dylan is saying that he needs to give us, the viewers, access to him.
Interesting.
And to the other people in the movie, or at least to a version of him, in order for the film to be successful. It's actually quite similar, I think, to the opening of Citizen Kane, where you
this is some lofty stuff.
Yeah, well, I do teach film history.
I know you do. I know, but this is wonderful, and I'm waiting for you to write about this, but...
And I'm going to.
Okay, good.
So Citizen Kane begins with a no trespassing sign outside of the castle where the main character lives, and then the camera kind of, you know, cranes above the sign and goes into the home of this character, and that's Orson Welles' way of saying, you know, I am going to trespass on this character's life.
Right.
I'm going to allow you to peek behind the curtain.
Right. He's giving us access.
He's giving us access.
Right.
And that's what Dylan does at the very beginning.
But that's wonderful. See, I need more of this. I think everyone...
And then it cuts to David Blue, you know, that great hipster folk singer playing a pinball machine next to a swimming pool.
That, I love those scenes.
Yeah,
just like riffing on...
He's like the Greek chorus, right? And then he's talking about how he first came to the village in the early 60s, and the folk musicians and the beat poets he saw. Right. And he's using all this great slang. And then he says, and that's how I first met Bob. Yeah. So that's letting us know that Rolling Thunder was, in a way, a return to Dylan's roots. Right. Yeah. I love that. And I think the first time I saw it, I was mildly distracted. Like, what is that pinball machine doing by the pool? It's so absurd. Yeah, it is so. I mean, maybe that's part of it. But what you say here, though, is he's playing with time and space. And those are, I think the focus that Dylan was on when he was painting with Norman Rabin about how you can look at one bit or you can look at all of it, and it kind of it's manipulating the space. Right. But also these ideas of time that Dylan has consistently focused on throughout his career, and so it's just another expression of that. Absolutely. Yeah. Like the past, the present, and the future are all kind of happening at the same time. I agree. Today, tomorrow, and yesterday too. Exactly. Yeah. Right. The lessons he learned from Norman Rabin that he applied to the songs on Blood on the Tracks, I think he also applied to Renaldo and Clara. Yeah. You know, he's making leaps of poetic logic from one image to the next, one scene to the next. Right. And he's not spoon feeding it to you. You know, you have to kind of come to the film and be active in analyzing it. I'll give you another example. There's also a scene where Dylan and members of the Rolling Thunder Revue are having Thanksgiving with the members of the Tuscarora Indian Nation. Yes, yes. And over that scene, the song that's playing is People Get Ready by Curtis Mayfield, which is an amazing song. Dylan's covered it you know, multiple times throughout his career. But it's kind of a contemporary gospel song that's also a civil rights song. And the version that's playing is from a rehearsal he did. And so he consciously placed that over this Thanksgiving scene. And then in the middle of the song, there's a line where he sings, all you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. And it cuts away from the Thanksgiving to a shot of a truck barreling down the highway.
Right.
So it's the lyric in the song that takes us
to the continuity of the image.
And you see this semi barreling down the highway, and then it cuts from that to the crew trucks unloading equipment at the next venue.
See, why don't people see that genius like you do?
And why doesn't that thrill them to watch that?
Right.
Because they're expecting it to be
narrative, like beginning, middle, end, and spoon-fed. I love this. Roberta says often, our dear friend Roberta Rakov, that Dylan is light years ahead of us and we're just trying to catch up.
She's right.
Yeah, I mean, what are we going to say to that other than, like, yes, the gospel according to Roberta. But do you think that Renaldo and Clara will be reconsidered much like folks me are doing with the 80s right now?
Yes, I do. We talked about this before on another podcast, but what's really preventing the reputation of Renaldo and Clara from being rehabilitated is the fact that it's impossible to see in good quality.
Yes.
Anybody who wants to watch that movie, you have to seek it out, and you have to seek out a bootleg copy with poor image and sound.
Right.
Even if you are not going to be partial to the film, because it's not for everyone.
Right.
Even if you're not going to be partial to it, just being able to see and hear it the way it was meant to be seen and heard, that alone will increase the appreciation of it from a lot of people. Because if you look at the footage that's in Scorsese's Rolling Thunder review doc, it looks and sounds amazing.
Right.
So eventually, that whole movie will be released in that quality.
There's anyone listening or watching who can make that happen.
Criterion Collection in particular.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please do that.
Do it.
Please give us that gift.
Eat the document as well.
Yes. Eat the document. So what will that assessment look like when we finally get to that point? If you have a voice in it, obviously I think you would be leading the charge, but what would you want to say about it?
Well, it's funny that you ask that because I'm actually writing a book about Bob Dylan as a filmmaker. And I'm co-writing it with our mutual friend, Adam Seltzer.
Yes.
And
I feel like this is breaking news.
It is.
Okay.
Nobody knows this.
Yes.
This information has not been...
I did have an inkling because Adam told me, but I did, as I said, I kept it in the vault, and this is the first time I'm talking out loud with anyone about it.
We've not mentioned this online, but we did submit an application to the Bob Dylan Archives in Tulsa to be able to access, manuscripts.
Are you giddy?
I'm so excited. Yeah, we're going in December for a week.
Wow.
Right before they close for the Christmas holiday.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, we don't know entirely what shape the book will take because we're kind of going there on a fact-finding mission.
Yes.
But the premise of the book, what we put in our proposal, is that we're going to examine the way that Dylan's filmmaking work interfaces with his songwriting.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And so in the case of Renaldo and Clara, he spent all of 1977 editing that film, which is when I think the songs for Street Legal were kind of in their embryonic stage.
Yeah.
So what kind of connections will we make between those things?
I have two thoughts. One, maybe stay at the Residence Inn right next door to the center. And two, is this not the best time to be a Dylan scholar and fan?
Oh, it's the most exciting time.
So much exciting work is being done and great, insightful work by so many different people with different perspectives.
Yes, yeah. I consider myself very lucky that they're allowing us in there with our number 2 pencils.
That's amazing. I think, I know that Hearts of Fire is going to receive a reevaluation because the dear Rebecca Slayman is writing about it for the book that Court and I are editing. Court Cardy and I are editing on the 80s. And so what do you think that, we were disagreeing about that a little bit offline. when we were talking. So what are your thoughts on Hearts of Fire?
It's terrible.
It is, but I mean, it is so bad it's good though.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's very watchable.
Yes.
For a bad movie.
Yes.
I mean, I'm saying Renaldo and Clara is a masterpiece. Some people are going to think I'm crazy for saying that.
I don't think it's a masterpiece in that way. There's something, above and beyond creative that's going on that we have, and with Renaldo and Clara, that we're kind of cracking the surface. And part of it is what you say, that we don't have a good copy. And if you can hear the construction or see, you can hear the construction, we are maybe in a construction zone, I don't know, but it's definitely apparent. But Hearts of Fire is not that film. It is not an art film. It is not trying to reach beyond any narrative scope or create poetic logic. It's just a movie.
Yeah.
And so
where Dylan's, job was to show up and say lines.
Right.
And he is intensely watchable. I mean, that's what makes the movie fun, is his performance. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, replace him with anybody else, and nobody would want to watch it.
No.
Yeah.
No. But I think it's interesting that he's a love interest for like an 18-year-old girl. I mean, that's like part of it's that it's so reflective of that time period with like the acid wash jeans and the big hair, and it's delightful to watch.
And to his credit,
yes,
he seems a little uncomfortable with it.
Yes.
He's not really leaning into the romantic leading man role the way that you feel like the character should.
Yeah.
Because it is a romance, He sings a song to her.
Yeah.
I've got a couple more years on you, babe, and that's all.
Yeah.
So he serenades her.
Puts a lovely blanket on her when she's asleep in the hay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we don't really, we were talking about Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
We don't really believe in the chemistry between them.
I don't, no. Yes. Yeah, there's really, I think between the romantic leads in that movie, there isn't a whole lot of, there's not a lot of chemistry going on.
Right.
Yeah. But it's a fun movie.
It's a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen it in 20 years.
And the classic, do you want some eggs?
Yeah. That's what it is to me. It's a collection of memes now.
Yes, yeah.
And GIFs.
Yeah, exactly. The punch. I mean, it's the greatest punch in filmmaking.
It is. It's an amazing punch.
Yeah, it is.
Because he's not even looking.
No, just... Is he like drunk and off balance? I mean...
I don't know. And the irony is he's a boxer.
Yeah.
The one time he's required to throw a punch.
But he's not playing a boxer.
That's true.
So he's in character.
He threw a bad punch on purpose.
He did. That's acting.
Exactly.
I love it. What are the merits of the movie? I think we covered that a little bit. That maybe it's just
Hearts of Fire.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't direct it.
No.
He didn't write it.
No.
But in a way, he did sort of assert his authorial voice through the performance, and he always does.
Yes.
Whenever he's on screen, there's a sense that he's directing what happens in a way.
And it's hard not to, when he's not on screen, it's not that I get bored, but when he's on screen, and maybe it's my own bias as a Dylan fan, that I'm like I want to see what he's doing. And he does have a sense of presence.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's hard not to watch him.
Oh, he's just so weird.
Yeah.
The way he moves.
Yeah.
It's, you can't, you just want to look at it.
Exactly. So maybe that's it. It's not a Bob Dylan film, but he's in it. And so maybe that's the merit.
Exactly.
And he's doing something interesting in the 80s.
Yeah.
There we go. So shifting a bit, let's talk about A Complete Unknown.
Yeah.
Thoughts? I'm sure you've seen, and shout out to Elijah Wald, who took part in our fundraiser.
Dylan Fans for Harris.
He did such a good job.
He did a great
connecting, our current political moment to Dylan's work in the 60s, and he did beautiful performances. So thank you, Elijah. But you've seen the trailer, yes?
I have seen the trailer.
Thoughts?
Yes. I am cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
I'm rooting for it.
I love that.
As a Dylan fan, I want it to be good. Mm-hmm. If it's not good, I'll be the first person to admit it.
Okay.
Because I'm not really a fan of modern Hollywood.
That's fair.
And the biopic genre is a problematic genre by nature. Every biopic is, reductive.
Yes.
And simplistic.
Because it has to fit into sort of a pop culture formula.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. It's sort of like there's a way to make a biopic, and it doesn't matter who it's about. You just plug that musician into that formula. But I think there's some indications that this is not going to be that.
Right.
First of all, from what I understand, it only takes place over a 4-year span of time, which is pretty narrow for that genre. So I think, and also, I'm a fan of James Mangold, the director. He's a really smart filmmaker.
Yes.
And everything he does is well crafted. He's like a craftsman, the way that filmmakers used to be in Hollywood in the 1950s. He works in all sorts of different genres and is kind of successful at making films in a classical style, no matter what the genre is.
I think, and I have 2 follow-ups, but I just want to make a quick comment. I think the Rolling Stone interview that he did eased a lot of people's minds, folks like us, that, there's an intent there, that, it was a guy who was suffocating, went to New York, recreated himself, and was suffocating again, so recreated himself. And so I think that makes us feel a little bit
safe.
I guess there is that's something that maybe Dylan felt, and so and that's how he explained it to Dylan, and Dylan thought it made sense, and so I think that makes us feel, you're right, safer, comfortable. But you said if it's good, so what will make it good?
Well, I think the film is going to succeed or fail based on Timothée Chalamet's performance.
Okay.
And what's funny is I've heard a lot of people say, yeah, it's going to be just fine. It's going to be okay.
Right.
And I don't think so. I think either he knocks it out of the park.
Right.
Or it doesn't work and it's a failure.
There's no middle ground.
I don't see how there could be.
Okay.
Timothée Chalamet, and he doesn't have to convince us he's Bob Dylan, because that's not going to happen.
No.
But he has to play a coherent character. That's what has to happen. And he has to make us feel that he's capturing the spirit of who Dylan was at that time.
Right. And as he's going through those changes.
Yes, and there were a lot. I mean, it's a remarkable evolution just from 61 to 65. So if he can do that, and I think the trailer looks promising.
It does.
If he can do that, then I think it'll be cause for celebration.
So what will make it awful then? Is it just if he phones it in, he doesn't hit the mark?
I don't think
he can phone it in.
I don't think he's going to phone it in. Actor. It's just, are we going to believe it?
Gotcha.
That's what it's all about.
Do you think that anyone who is like us, Dylan devoted, are going to believe it? There's going to be a bit of skepticism when we watch it, and I understand that separation.
I do. It's absolutely possible. Mangold also made Walk the Line, which I think is excellent. Joaquin Phoenix does not look a whole lot like Johnny Cash.
No.
And he also doesn't really sound like him. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix's voice, he does all his own singing. He's clearly singing in a lower register than what is comfortable for him.
Right.
And yet, it's a great performance. Reese Witherspoon looks even less like June Carter.
Right.
And she's amazing. And I think the thing is, like, Johnny Cash just doesn't have hardcore fans the way Bob Dylan does, who have seen every, inch of footage of Johnny Cash in the 50s and 60s. So they're not comparing it. Right. You know what I mean?
Where folks like us, we're watching any bit of video, bootlegs, and so there's literacy that we have that you're saying that Johnny Cash fans didn't, so maybe that's more believable. Yeah. You
have the Dylan fans saying, oh, he never wore a scarf in 1961.
I know.
Who gives a shit?
Right.
I don't.
Right.
It's a movie.
Wearing the scarf is not going to make or break the movie in terms of the performance and whether or not we believe it.
I mean, here's what it is.
That is the wrong shade of tan.
When I say whether we believe it, I don't mean does it feel like
no, I understand.
This is what happened.
Right.
Does it move us?
Right.
Emotionally.
The pathos of it.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I think I'm optimistic because I feel like for Dylan to live on as I want him to, like Shakespeare. In 400 years, people are still puzzling through Renaldo and Clara. We have to bring new people in. And I think Chalamet is going to do that. That someone will go see the movie because they stand for Timothée Chalamet, and they'll be like, well, this Bob Dylan guy is kind of interesting, and then that will bring them to Bob Dylan. So that's my hope for the movie.
He's already done it.
I know, but
a whole bunch of teens are already listening to Dylan on Spotify.
Right, and I want that. I want that to grow larger.
I know. Yes. I don't understand why there are fans who don't think that's a good thing.
I think it's a great thing.
There are fans who are rooting for this movie to fail.
No,
they're convinced it's going to be bad.
First of all, why would you root for anyone who makes art in a beautiful way to fail? And second of all, why would you root for Dylan to fail and expanding the Dylan universe to fail?
Exactly.
I don't get that.
If the movie is good and it's successful, that'll be better for all of us.
Yeah. It broadens our appeal.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so last time we talked, we discussed visual aspects of Dylan's songs, and it's one of my favorite moments in the Dylan Tance interviews when you talked about, I've made up my mind to give myself to you. And in fact, anytime I hear that song, I think of your interpretation of it. It's so beautiful. That song is so beautiful anyway, but just what you had to say about it really cemented my love for it. So let's recapture that magic.
Yeah, absolutely.
What other songs are particularly visual or would translate well to screen?
So many.
Right.
So many. The great thing about Dylan as a lyricist, and by the way, he's not just a lyricist.
Correct.
I mean, he's a great musician. Mm-hmm. But as a lyricist, he's always just pushing the boundaries of language. Mm-hmm. And he always has, starting with Hard Rain's Are Gonna Fall. Nobody had ever written anything like that.
Right.
So poetic, so fragmented. And to do that in 1962 and to show the influences of literature, beat poetry, and to put that into a song.
At 21.
At 21. It's insane.
Yeah, it is.
And he's continued to do that. So I think, there are so many songs that lend themselves to, the short film treatments, which is what they deserve and have rarely gotten. Right. I think, narrative songs like Brownsville Girl, that could be a short film, Yeah. All you have to do, you can follow the plot as it is. And, but then there are other songs that are more kind of atmospheric. I think a lot of the Lanois.
I was going to say Lanois.
Yeah, I mean, Man with the Long Black Coat, even without the lyrics, the music conjures up a mood, that would be fun to, capture.
Sort of, because they recorded in New Orleans, I'm just thinking of it sounds like that sort of murky, steamy, swampy,
late night vibe.
Yeah. So if Dylan's people called you and said, we'd like you to direct a music video, other than Brownsville Girl, for any Dylan song, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good, probably something fast-paced and exciting.
Silvio.
Silvio
is kind of narrative.
There's already a video for Thunder on the Mountain, but that's kind of a montage of clips from throughout his career. I think Thunder on the Mountain would lend itself to an exciting short film because it's so wild. Yeah. The lyrics in that song are insane.
What would it look like, though?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'd have to
get out your index cards and plot it out. Yeah,
exactly.
I have this.
It wouldn't be literal,
right?
I'm sure you've seen the Paul Schrader video for "Tight Connection to My Heart," where he sings.
And he's dancing, and I love it.
And he sings about the powder blue wig, and then you see a powder blue wig.
Yeah, it's too literal.
Roll down a flight of steps. So it can't be a one-to-one.
Yeah, he did not love that video. There's a Rolling Stone interview. He's
Paul Schrader.
Yeah, no, Dylan.
Yes.
He says, he's...
And Schrader as well.
Yeah,
he admitted it was a failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still great in a Hearts of Fire kind of way.
See, this is the problem. We get stuck in this paradox of like, it's not good, but we love it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think, to try and answer your question, what you would have to do as a filmmaker is push the boundaries of the form to capture what he's doing with the words. He sings, "I sucked the milk out of 1,000 cows." That's just outrageous. Yeah. Nobody has ever put those words together. Nobody has ever said that. Yeah. And what does it mean? It's 18 years later, and we still don't know what it means.
He's light years ahead of us.
And we laugh at it because it's ridiculous.
What are you currently working on? We talked about your book. That's very exciting. I cannot wait. And maybe you'll come back when you and maybe we'll do you and Adam together, talk about your book.
It might be a good 5 years.
Well, that's fine. I understand how publishing works.
Yeah.
It's glacial,
Yes.
especially if it's academic. So what other things, Dylan or not Dylan related?
So I have another film that I hope to shoot next year,
Yes.
a feature titled Promenade.
Okay.
And so I'm trying very hard to make that happen. Mm-hmm. But that's dependent upon being able to raise a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Because features are not cheap.
Right.
Even at the low budget level.
Mm-hmm. Where do you get your funding?
I just keep asking people until I have it.
Okay. Panhandle,
and I don't know anyone, so
right,
it's like I don't know where it's going to come from.
Just like busking, panhandling.
Exactly.
Do you ever do like crowdsourcing for them?
I've done it before.
Right.
I did a feature called Rendezvous in Chicago that was mostly crowdfunded. Mm-hmm. But the problem is you can really only do that once.
Right.
It's a lot of work. And then, you can only go to that well so many times.
And then your producer credits are like scrolling. Right?
Exactly,
yeah.
for minutes on end.
Yeah. No, but I respect what you do because, any independent filmmaker, because you're trying to stay out of the Hollywood machine and make things that are meaningful and that really speak to people in terms of emotions and hit on a very human level. And I think that that's important to keep that industry going. So I hope you're successful raising the funds, and I love your films.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's independent filmmaking is hard because you have to be obsessed with it in order to get it done. And that's kind of what's cool about it is it's so hard.
Right.
That all of the people who aren't tough enough are gonna quit.
Yeah.
The people who think they want to do it because they want to be famous.
Let's make a movie.
Yeah, it's like they're going to try it once and
the
then
Johnny
stop.
Depp tie-in.
Yeah, whereas,
right.
Ed Wood.
Yeah.
Good. My favorite Johnny Depp performance. Mm-hmm. Whereas, I think what's inspirational about Dylan, to take it back to, the reason why we're here, is he does what he wants to do.
Right.
Regardless of what people expect of him. Mm-hmm. And that's the shining example for me as an artist. It's like I want to do that too. I want to make movies when I'm 83 years old.
I want you to.
And I want it to be the equivalent of the Outlaw Festival tour, where he's doing something that no one could have predicted, and he's having a blast doing it.
He does seem like he's having fun.
He is having fun.
That's very cool. I love that authenticity to your own artistic vision, and it's really difficult. Being an independent filmmaker, being involved with one myself, it is a tough industry. It's a tough profession to have. But you're right, you have to be passionate about it. And, you have to have a good group of people around you. And so who are the folks that you work with most often? That's really an interesting question to me.
Yeah, well, when you work with people and you have a good experience, you always want to repeat that.
Right.
So I'm very fortunate that my editor, Eric Marsh, has cut both of my last 2 features as well as my last 2 shorts. Right now, he's like my right arm.
Right.
If I could not get him to edit my next film, I would be very upset because I've come to rely on him so much.
Right.
I'd have to retrain someone from scratch, and that does not sound like fun.
That was sort of my follow-up, because we see that Dylan obviously surrounds himself by a very tight circle.
Yeah, Eric, my editor, he's
right.
my Tony Garnier.
Okay, that's fair. And I was going to ask that like when you say, to bring it back to Dylan too, that Renaldo and Clara was created in the editing process.
Yeah.
And I just know from David editing that he's looking at multiple shots to see how he can make the narrative. And is there that trust that you have with Eric now that you don't necessarily need to communicate with him? You just know he's going to
100%.
do that.
Yeah, I turn the footage over to him. He does a rough cut without me even being there,
right?
Which is great. I know a lot of directors who edit their own work, and I always think they should not.
Okay.
Simply because if you have another set of eyes on it, that person is going to do something you would have never thought of. And they'll probably surprise you in a good way. And if they surprise you in a bad way, you can always undo it.
Right.
You can always say, oh no, because as the director, you're going to end up co-editing it anyway. So the time for you to not be there is in the early stages,
right,
in my opinion. But I also say this as someone who does not shoot a lot of coverage. So whatever footage I turn over to my editor, he's not going to do anything radically different than what, I would have done anyway.
He's got 50 takes to pick from.
Right, or 50 different angles.
Right, right. Okay, very cool. Anything else you're working on? The book, Promenade, teaching classes.
The book, the movie,
being
teaching.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Going to see Bob Dylan shows.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about or you'd like to share? Or have we covered everything we need to cover?
I think we've got it all.
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah. And if not, we'll just,
We'll just do it again.
We'll do it agaagain.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with me.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
It's inspirational because you are an independent artist out there and you're doing great work and obviously people enjoy it because they see your films, you're winning at festivals, and so I just appreciate the work that you're doing and also your love for Dylan and our friendship as well.
I've got to come screen in Houston.
You do. I have a place where you can stay, and I can't promise there will be no snakes, but I'll do my best to make it a snake-free environment. Well, thanks again, Michael.
Thank you.
That's it for us today, and be sure to look for a new episode of Infinity Goes Up on Trial. They launch the first of every month. Thanks for watching.